Okay guys, crawler time today, and I've got the RedCat Gen 8 Scout 2 versus the Traxxas TRX4 on the bench. Now some people may say it's a slightly unfair comparison, should be comparing the Gen 8 to the Traxxas TRX4 Sport. My personal opinion, and it is just mine, is people are going to be comparing these like for like. It is going to be a split decision. Am I going to buy a Gen 8? Am I going to buy a Traxxas TRX4? At which point that $160 difference is going to matter. I know people say there's only a $40 difference between the Gen 8 and the Sport. However, I do think a lot of people out there, particularly those new to crawling, are going to be looking at these like for like. And I think it's a good comparison on the side, as the 2-speed gearbox aside, body aside, there's a lot of similarities between the TRX4 and a TRX4 Sport, so I think it's a fair comparison. And before we get the camera off the tripod, I am sure you will have lots of comments and lots of questions on both of these cars, the Gen 8 in particular being the new boy on the block, so do post away your point of view, ask any questions you like, and I will do my best to answer them. If I can't answer them, hopefully other people will do. Hopefully going out on the trail with both of these boys side by side fairly soon, so if you don't want to miss that video, then don't forget to subscribe. So I'm going to get out of camera, off the tripod, going to compare them side by side, also going to look at the transmitters, see what the differences are on there. Now I sat here for a while thinking about how to do this side by side comparison, so I thought it'd work from the outside in, and by that I mean let's start with the bodies and then go inside the cars. Okay, on the Traxxas TRX4, you've got this exoskeleton on the roof rack, which forms quite a big impact bumper if you happen to fall off like a 30-foot high drop like I did. You will notice the mud guards are inside the TRX4 body. On the Gen 8, it's got mud guards, but they're actually attached to the chassis front and back. You've got no exoskeleton on the body, either on the outside or you've got nothing inside there as well, so it's purely the body that's going to take the shot. I think you've got the little mini mud guards on the inside there as well, but it's a very different mud guard setup compared to the Traxxas TRX4. So that's the first thing, sort of starting on the outside there, boys. Now moving on round to the front. First up, those portal axles and the clearance they give. You've got the RedCat Gen 8 on the left, TRX4 on the right. It's virtually identical clearance on those on the front with the portal axles on there. Now front bumper wise, on the Gen 8 we've got these two little hooks on the front, exactly the same on the Traxxas TRX4. I'm not sure whether the lighting kit on the Traxxas TRX4 fits through these holes or not on there, but on the Gen 8 the LED lighting kit is going to be fitted partly to the bumper as well as the body. Moving on back, on the Gen 8 you've got the servo fit right smack bang at the front. Now if I move over so you can just pull it out there so you can see it, the servo on the Traxxas TRX4 is probably set a good 2 inches at least further back in the chassis. Motor wise, on the Gen 8 the motor is sat dead center on the chassis there, and it's also, if you look where the edge of the wheel is, the back of the can is there, so the motor is nearly encompassed, if you like, by the wheel diameter on there. Moving across, on the Traxxas TRX4, back end of the motor is only just behind the wheels, so the thing is maybe sitting a full 3 inches almost further back in the car, whereas the Gen 8 one is sitting around about here, if you can see that from the side. So that is a key fundamental difference. They've shifted much more of the weight forwards on the Gen 8 compared to the TRX4. Speaking of that motor, 17 turn motor on the RedCat versus 21 turn motor on the TRX4. Now on the Ford Bronco version of the Traxxas TRX4, there is a little mounting plate here where you can fit a small battery, so you're shifting the battery from there right the way forwards onto here. And there isn't anything like that as such on the RedCat. I'm not quite convinced there's enough room to get a battery in there. However, when I was looking at it, to spot, I'd got this pack, Venom pack, on the side. That will fit on there, and I've tested that body will go on over the top of that. So if you wanted, you could immediately shift your battery using a thin pack and put it over the weight on there. How can you attach it on there, Richie, idiot boy? Well, you've got this crossbeam on there, 2 cable ties crossing over the top, one there one there would secure the thing very tightly in place to my mind, and that then isn't going to be going anywhere. So that is one maybe free mod you can do to shift the weight. Not everyone is going to agree with that with the weight being too high up, but if you want to shift the weight from the back to the front, much like the TRX4 Ford Bronco, you could do so. Now, speaking of batteries, where the Gen 8 differs over this TRX4 is, by shifting that motor further forwards in the chassis, they've been able to drop the battery tray down lower. With the TRX4, with the motor sitting further back and the 2-speed gearbox, and I'll come on to that in a minute, they've had to lift the battery tray slightly higher, whereas on the Gen 8 it's 2-3 inches further towards the front. And I'm going to drop the battery tray down. I shall show you that from the side in just 1 second. Speaking of that 2-speed gearbox, one of these servos controls the 2-speed gearbox. You've not got that 2-speed gearbox in the RedCat Gen 8, which is why some people may be initially comparing this to the TRX4 Sport rather than the TRX4 original car on there. But you have to ask yourself, is that extra $160 worth the 2-speed gearbox, when a lot of the time you're going to be having low gear anyway? Anyway guys, I hope you're liking the comparison of the two cars so far. If you are, you like this sort of thing, then do give it the thumbs up. Anyway, back on with the comparison. Moving on up, we've got our ESC on the left and the receiver on the right on the RedCat, and the opposite on the Traxxas. We've got the receiver on the left, ESC on the right. So they're about the same weight balance wise in terms of the electrics. They've both got running rails, rock strips light down either side. And I would just say, when it comes to that ESC, you can reach through underneath the body of the Gen 8 to turn the thing on and off, whereas the Traxxas, you need to take the body off in order to reach the on-off switch, which is still a minor annoyance, but an annoyance nonetheless to my mind. And I would just say, when it comes to the electrics, both of these cars are fully waterproof, and both will either take a 2S or a 3S LiPo. The way they attach the battery, completely different. You've got Velcro quick releases on here, and you've got the new Traxxas system where you simply push down on this and pivot the tray out of the way to fit your battery. Arguably, the Velcro gives you more options in terms of fitting larger packs in there, which you are slightly limited if you want to fit like a 6,000 milliamp pack in there. It's going to struggle to fit in there with the Traxxas system. Not saying you can't do it, just something to be aware of. Chassis wise, they've both got twin metal rail chassis running the full length of the car, so they're similar in that respect. Very different in terms of the shock tower setup on here. On the Traxxas, at the rear and at the front, you've got no adjustment points as such on there. I think you've got either 9 or 12 on either side, both front and rear on the Gen 8, but on the Traxxas you've just got that one position at the top there. I have to say guys, whilst I go out crawling, I don't know how much that adjustment is going to make to the handling of the car versus no adjustment or not. So please do have your comments on there. So while I drive a crawler, I don't claim to be an expert on them, but I'm just highlighting the differences between the two. And one thing you will notice, just moving on down to have a look at that steering setup on there, you've got the metal diff cover both front and rear on the Gen 8. Just a plastic one on the Traxxas. The Traxxas cross member steering arm is sitting slightly higher above the diff, whereas the RedCat one is slightly lower. And both the Gen 8 and the TRX4 both have aluminum threaded shocks, both front and rear on both cars. Now, one thing I noticed when I'm moving to the back there, body pillars. They are conspicuous in their absence from the RedCat Gen 8. However, it does come with the holes for them, both front and rear, and it does include a set of body pillars which you can use to fit them, which I'm guessing we can fit them to that stock blue body or orange body on there, or it gives you options to fit your own style. Okay, now at the front I mentioned that metal diff cover on there. Big difference between these two cars. The Gen 8 has got locked diffs both front and rear full time. On the TRX4, using one of those little servos down there, you can lock and unlock the front and rear diffs. But if you're driving around with them most of the time locked, then I would say, does the money come into play when making that purchase decision? Same at the back, we've got our two little hooks on the Traxxas bumper, two little hooks on the Gen 8. Clearance wise for those portal axles, I've got left, we've got the RedCat Gen 8. On the right, the TRX4. So again, pretty much millimetre for millimetre the same in terms of that clearance on there. Okay, well I've turned around so you can see them side by side to check out the clearance underneath them from the side. got the Gen 8 on the left that you're looking at now. Now the clearance on that appears to be just marginally smaller than the TRX4, although I need to read the specs, or if someone can guide me on that, I would love to know. But I think there's millimeters in it. But the Gen 8 just looks to have slightly less clearance, but we're talking millimeters though, guys. However, looking from the side, the one area where they are very clearly different is that battery tray on the Gen 8 is sitting a good couple of centimeters lower than the TRX4 one. So the Gen 8 does have the advantage on that lower centre of gravity compared to the TRX4. That's a clearer look at the rock rails and the available footprint you've got to work on if you want to put any other electrics on the RedCat Gen 8 is very comparable to that of the rock rails, and the same footprint you've got there on the TRX4, so they're now identical in terms of the room you've got to play with on there. Okay, well I'll flip both the cars over to have a comparison underneath. You will see the Gen 8 Servo there on the left compared with the Traxxas one sitting way back in the car on the right. However, arguably the Traxxas one has the better, like, I can't think of what we want to call it, pull-in line from the way the Servo is directly in line with the steering. That said, this steering on the Gen 8, when I've been out trialing it, very, very strong metal geared Servo. Highly impressed with the steering so far. Just panning on down so you can have a good look at that, and then I'm quickly going to do the same on the TRX4. TRX4 underneath maybe gives that slightly beefier feel to it, even though it's pretty much all plastic underneath in terms of the casing there as well. What you've got on the TRX4 hidden away under here is the 2-speed gearbox. The 2-speed gearbox is great provided you keep it well maintained. You do have the simplicity with the RedCat of just the conventional single-speed gearbox on there. Traditional 4-link setup, both front and rear on both of these cars. You'll note the difference in the gearbox positioning there, where you've got the drive shaft offset to the left, whereas both of the RedCat ones are more central on there. Tire wise, on the Gen 8 on the left, TRX4 on the right, kind of similar style of patterns on there. The only difference I'll notice will be when we get both of them out on the trail there together. Wheel wise though, the RedCat Gen 8 is winning that battle with these nice wheel chrome beadlock rims on there, with a little black cover over the nut to keep all the crud out. The Traxxas one, less so. Going back to that motor, the Traxxas 21 turn motor, looking at it there, is actually sitting quite a bit lower down in the chassis than the RedCat one is. Something maybe minor, but definitely worthwhile noting that the motor in the RedCat is sitting slightly higher up in the chassis than the Traxxas one. So we've got portal axles front and rear on both of these cars. The eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed I've got brass portal axle brakes fitted to my TRX4. Just worthwhile pointing out that they're not fitted as stock. In terms of stock suspension, you will notice the slight differences. The springs are attached to the sort of the 4-link arm on here on the Traxxas, whereas on the RedCat the springs are attached to the top of the axle. Okay guys, well I've started on the outside, moved to the inside, and now back to the outside just to talk lastly about the transmitter setup they come with. On the Traxxas TRX4 you've got this red button here which switches between high and low gear. The RedCat Gen 8 only got a single speed on there, so you've not got that function, but then there's one less thing to go wrong on there, and arguably the TRX4 Sport also only has a single gear, so I can sort of see why people do compare this model to it, but I still think that people would compare this to that when buying it. On the top here you've got the switch which you can use to lock or unlock the front and rear diffs on the TRX4. Both of the ones on the RedCat are locked all the time. However, I drive around with mine on the TRX4 locked for most of the time. I would say 90% of the time they're locked. I'm tending to unlock the diffs maybe when I'm driving back to the parking lot on the trail and I need to speed up a bit and be aware. It also has a cruise control function on the TRX4, which I thought, oh, that's just like a bell and whistle thing on there. It's actually quite neat. When you're going along, you set the speed on the throttle, you press that red button and you can take your hand off and the car just goes along, stays at whatever speed you've left it. The Traxxas also has steering trim The RedCat also has steering trim on here. We've also got throttle trim and steering dual rate on here. Is the dual rate necessary? I know this is a stock RedCat transmitter on here. I would say the steering dual rate isn't a necessary feature on the crawler, because what's the steering dual rate for is great on speed run cars where you can dial the dual rate down so that when you turn you only make a marginal turn on a car and not that high angle which is going to cause you to crash when doing a speed run. That's not the case with the crawler. So dual rate not necessarily needed on the RedCat, but I know that's a stock RedCat transmitter. So there we go guys, food for thought, and hopefully I've got everything across reasonably well on there. They both come lighting kit enabled. I suspect the RedCat one is going to be considerably cheaper than the 190 something bucks for the TRX4 one will be. So it's like something to consider. If you like the idea of going totally scale and fitting lights to the thing, I suspect the RedCat lighting kit is probably going to be around 80 to 100 buck mark versus the 190 for the Traxxas one, but we will see in due course. Anyway guys, I hope that was as useful. I'm sure there will be people with lots of comments on the cars and wanting to share their opinions. So, well guys, I hope that side-by-side comparison came across okay, and I managed to get across the similarities between the cars and the differences between the cars. As I say, I know some people will be saying comparing this to the TRX4 Sport, but I think a lot of people, particularly new to the hobby, will be looking at this versus the original TRX4. If you were looking at a buying decision, hopefully this has given you all the advice that you need on the differences between the two cars. I shall be heading out on the trail with them as soon as I can and as soon as the weather allows me to do so. So if you don't want to miss those videos, then don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. And if you'd like your very own RedCat Gen 8, then why not get yours where I got mine, down at JJ Customs in San Jose, California. Either give them a call, send them an email, or check them out online today.